Right. So,
Yay!
yeah. Thank you so much to everyone who's joining us today. My name is Jillian. I'm the founder of Sharks for Kids. Excited to be back for another webinar, finishing off our awesome week of women in shark science. And excited to be here with Lindsay Graff. I've known Lindsay for many years now.
Yes.
About that, probably over 10. And Lindsay's a marine biologist that's done some incredible work in places like South Africa and Massachusetts with white sharks, but also Fiji, which she's going to talk about today, and these amazing bull sharks, as well as Bimini in the Bahamas, which is actually where we met. So I'm going to let you go ahead and get started and share these amazing animals with us. But just as a reminder, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Put your questions in the Q&A. I will answer some during the session, and then we'll save a few to ask Lindsay live at the end after she shares these amazing sharks with us. So thank you guys so much, and thank you so much, Lindsay Graff, for your time today and sharing with us.
Oh, you're so welcome. First of all, a huge thank you to Sharks for Kids for putting on this really impressive schedule of shark research and conservation webinars. There's some really incredible and interesting talks on here, and I wish that something like this existed when I was growing up, although minus the whole pandemic aspect. But Jillian did a really nice little introduction. I have to say that for all of that work that I've done over the world, the best part of it was really being able to work and learn from amazing mentors in Massachusetts, South Africa, Fiji, the Bahamas. So that's really been a highlight of my life. And what I wanted to touch on is kind of being a big part of being a shark biologist is to focus on education and conservation and outreach, because you're constantly striving to educate people about the vital importance of sharks within our ecosystems, why they should support shark research, conservation work. And with my webinar today, I wanted to focus on a very special part of the world where I've been working since 2012 that really serves as a template for other parts of the world when it comes to successful shark conservation, research, and education. So here, we're just going to briefly touch on these. I mean, Jillian just talked about them. There's just some photos of me where I've been lucky enough to work all over the world: Bimini, Fiji, Massachusetts. The photo of me with the tiger shark in the upper left-hand corner was actually taken by Duncan, Jillian's husband. But I have had some wonderful opportunities in the last 10 years. And I think it's just a reminder to everyone that it doesn't matter if you come from a landlocked state like I do in Vermont, everyone can grow up and become a marine biologist or a shark biologist. So before I start telling you guys about Fiji and its beautiful bull sharks, which I think you can actually see in my background, I thought that would be better, more interesting to look at than the blank wall that I have right back there. But before I start telling you about these amazing creatures, we're just going to spend a few minutes reviewing why you should care about sharks and their population levels within our world's ocean. The theme, kind of why sharks matter, has been a unifying topic between most of the previous webinars, and it's already been explained really well by much cooler people than me. So I would recommend going back and watching some of those webinars if you want to kind of delve more into this topic. But essentially on land, there's a lot of large apex predators that sit atop all the terrestrial food chains. Some are pictured here. You know, these animals can range from big cats like lions, tigers, jaguars, polar bears in the Arctic, Siberian brown bears, wolves, dingoes in Australia. You guys might be a little too young to get the movie reference about dingoes. Land apex predators can even include Nile crocodiles and anacondas in the Amazon rainforest, which are normally what we would think of as marine predators. And they really make up a diverse collection of predators that are roaming our Earth. But unlike on land, ocean is really ruled by one type of animal, and that's the shark. 450 million years of evolution has allowed for over 500 species of sharks to evolve to kind of every niche and corner of the sea, from hydrothermal vents thousands of miles under the sea to shallow seagrass beds to the frigid waters of the Arctic. And essentially everywhere where sharks are found in the oceans, they play a very critical or important role within our ecosystems. And then we get to the question, well, why does this matter? So in general, all marine food webs are topped with a shark species at their crown or apex. And as an apex predator, they control the population size of every single animal below them. And the removal of this apex predator can create a cascade of negative effects felt into every single trophic level. And a trophic level is kind of each step in the food chain. And without the presence of the highest level consumer, which is normally a large shark, or even in some cases an orca or killer whale, each different level will respectively increase or decrease in population, which in turn will negatively affect the whole ecosystem that it's in. So removing sharks from the marine ecosystem can lead to numerous detrimental effects in the short term and also in the long term, like habitat collapse, trophic imbalance, the loss of diversity of the animals, increased disease transmission between a lot of the prey, and altered primary production. Because don't forget that 70% of Earth's oxygen actually comes from our oceans. So who is removing these sharks from the oceans? It is, in one word, it's humans, of course. So through commercial and recreational fishing practices, bycatch, targeted shark finning, pollution, habitat loss, a really long list of ways that we are negatively impacting sharks. We have already been responsible for removing about 90% of all shark populations from the ocean. And over 100 million sharks are killed by humans every single year, which means that over the course of this talk, which is a little bit less than an hour, hopefully, about 11,000 sharks will be killed by humans. And a lot of these sharks are dying from overfishing, shark finning, being caught as bycatch, kind of everything that we just went through. Some things are pictured here. Unfortunately, I know this is a hard slide to look at. But why this matters is that sharks are incredibly vulnerable due to their life history traits because they grow really slowly. It takes them a really long time to reach reproductive maturity. So when they can start having babies, there's long gestation periods for females. And when they do give birth, it's only to a few young. So all of these traits kind of combine to mean that sharks are very susceptible to overexploitation. And the populations take a really long time to rebound in numbers once they've been depleted. So this leads us into why sharks matter and why the combination of conservation, research, education is so important when it comes to protecting the future of our shark populations and the health of our oceans. Just to reiterate what I said, and also just for comparison, humans kill over 100 million sharks every year. And on average, sharks are responsible for about 5 human deaths per year. So that's not really what you would expect from what you see in the news. And now to get to the more positive stuff, for all the time that we spend kind of focusing on how humans are awful and negatively impacting sharks worldwide, I think it's just as important to balance that information overload by sharing shark conservation success stories and how humans are helping to save these beautiful animals. So that's why I wanted to share with you the story of Shark Reef Marine Reserve in Fiji, which has been labeled by Ron and Valerie Taylor, two very famous shark divers, as the best shark dive in the world. And you can see in this photo that there are a lot of sharks that we're going to talk about. But before I get into that, what I've learned, I know I come from a very small state, but what I've learned over my 8 years of traveling to Fiji is that actually not a lot of people know where the country is located. And don't be ashamed if you are in that group. Fiji is an incredibly small collection of over 300 different islands in the South Pacific, which is really far away from the United States. Looked it up, and from where I'm sitting in Montpelier, Vermont right now, it's about 8,000 miles away. which is pretty far, especially when you can't really travel anywhere right now. So on this map, you can see that the Fiji Islands are located to the east of Australia, and then they're almost directly to the north of New Zealand. So they're located right in the South Pacific. And although collectively Fiji is made up of 300 or more different islands, the two largest islands, which you can see up in the corner, are called Viti Levu and Vanua Levu. And those mean Great Fiji and Great Land. And the capital of Fiji, which is called Suva, is located on Viti Levu. So Shark Reef Marine Reserve, now that everyone knows where in the world I'm talking about, is located off the southern side of Fiji's largest island that we were just talking about, Viti Levu. And it's on a small reef patch that is located on a much larger fringing reef in the area. And the story of how it came about is that in 2002, the founder of Benga Adventure Divers, Mike Newman, heard that there was a part of the reef in that area of Fiji that was well known for its abundant and also regular shark populations. So he wanted to possibly try to develop a marine protected area, or an MPA, that would really provide protection to these amazing shark populations, but also allow a dive operator and scientists to utilize it as a shark conservation diving site. But the unique obstacle that comes up when you are trying to establish any type of MPA or marine reserve in Fiji is that Fiji actually has a long established system of traditional fishing ground management called noli noli. And it's very unlike what we see in the United States, but essentially this means that inshore waters around Fiji are divided up and controlled by local villages, not necessarily the government, as the case in the United States. So each noli noli is fished by inhabitants of a specific village, and if you want to visit that area on the reef, you have to go directly to the village and you have to obtain a letter of consent that is then endorsed by the government. So this is a very different process than how MPAs and marine reserves are established in the United States, where they are established and managed by various levels of our government. So something that's a little unique to Fiji and other smaller places in the South Pacific. So actually before I begin, I just want to clear this up. So you can see the sign for Benga Adventure Divers in the corner. So in Fijian, Qs, so Benga, B-E-Q-A, Qs are pronounced NGs. So Benga and not Becca. I don't want you to think that I've spent 8 years not knowing how to pronounce any of these things. So just a little Fijian lesson there. And in 2002 and 2003, Mike Newman worked with those local villages because of the noli noli. And he worked with the ones that have the fishing rights to that area of the reef where Shark Reef Marine Reserve is located. And he wanted to set up an MPA where the local stakeholders, so those villages that fish there, would become the direct beneficiaries of the future diving and tourism. They would be the ones who would directly benefit from protecting that reef. And their vision working together was that one dive operator, so Benga Adventure Divers, would assist the villagers in monitoring and protecting the MPAs in no-take zone. They would train fish wardens from the same villages to aid in the management, and they would also focus on training and employing locals to make up their whole dive operation team. And this is really unique because a lot of marine protected areas are considered paper parks, which means that they are created on paper, but they don't necessarily have the management access to make sure that they are being protected the way that they should. And by making the villages that would normally fish on that area be the ones that are protecting Shark Reef Marine Reserve, you're really ensuring that the people who care the most about the area are being the ones that will protect it. So the way it was going to work was that protecting the area of Shark Reef Marine Reserve from fishing and poaching would help these villagers to receive a levy or a payment or a fee from every single diver that went diving with Benga Adventure Divers on the site. And this had the potential of being a long-term sustainable income to each village that was going to be a part of it. And thankfully, in 2004, in April, Shark Reef Marine Reserve was actually established as the first locally managed marine protected area in Fiji, and definitely the only one that was dedicated to research and preserving the local shark populations that were found there. So at the same time, Benga Adventure Divers was founded and was made up of a few of the longtime Fijian dive guides and shark feeders in the area named Rusi and Manasa. And these are the people who have been naturally swimming there, actually have been feeding the sharks for a very long time, so they knew these animals the best. And it was going to have the ability to bring out education outreach.
Sorry,
Yeah.
your slides, I don't know if it's still on the same slide, but it's still just the boat when the Benga Adventure Diver sign.
Oh, yes. That is the correct slide.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. We had an issue. No, we had an issue yesterday with some stuff being shared. So I just wanted to check in. No worries. Just making sure if I needed to help, I could.
Okay.
Awesome. Sorry, guys.
No, it's fine. So there's a video coming up in just a second. So you guys, please let me know if that is not playing or if the audio is not connecting.
Will do.
Right. So just to show you how special Shark Reef Marine Reserve is and why this tiny speck in the South Pacific caught the eye of shark lovers from around the world, what you're going to see is that within one dive between 30 meters and 5 meters, you can actually see up to 8 different species of sharks. And that includes the bull sharks, the main superstars. You can see between 40 and 60 bull sharks during specific parts of the year. And here's a photo. These are some of the bull sharks that you'd see on your dive. I call this a bull shark posse, which is a little, they look very friendly and like they're very excited to meet you. But besides bull sharks, you can also see 7 different species of sharks simply on one dive. So what you've got here, you've got tiger sharks, tawny nurse sharks, black tip and white tip reef sharks, gray reef sharks, silver tip, sicklefin lemon sharks. All of those on one dive is too much to handle as a shark lover. And this is just one particular photo that I really wanted to share because I don't believe that previous photo of the tawny nurse shark really does it justice. I am a huge lover of these tawny nurse sharks, and I think that they have the most hilarious attitudes. They're completely fearless of any shark that is larger than them. They're fearless of humans, everything. And their favorite thing is just kind of launching themselves directly into the food bins, which you can see here. And sometimes this results in them getting stuck for a little bit, which you can also see here. And this is one of my favorite moments that happened last year on a dive. Just wanted to share that so you can get more accurate viewpoint of what it's like diving with some of these sharks. But not looking at the sharks for a second, there's over 400 species of tropical fish and other marine creatures located just in that little area of Shark Reef Marine Reserve. And that part of Fiji, the southern coast, is actually called the soft coral capital of the world. So you have beautiful hard corals, but you have lots of beautiful, really colorful soft corals that you can go dive with too. Some of the things that you can see on one dive when you aren't too busy focusing on just the sharks, you can see humphead wrasse, giant clams, banded sea kraits, green sea turtles, hawksbill sea turtles, tons of clownfish like little Nemos. And during certain parts of the year, you will actually get to see humpback whales start their migration to Tonga to give birth to the young. So when you're on this dive, in the background, you can hear all of these humpback whales singing. So that's really, really beautiful. So what I wanted to share with you right now is a beautiful short video that was shot by underwater photographer and filmmaker Tom Viris. Hopefully I'm saying his name correctly, but he's done a lot of work on Shark Reef Marine Reserve. And it kind of gives you a better insight into what makes Shark Reef Marine Reserve so special, and also the people who help make it so special underwater.
Lindsay, we do have videos clear, but there's no audio, so I'm not sure.
There's no audio?
No.
Okay.
But that may be, sometimes with Zoom, there's just a delay, so we can see the video clear though.
Let's see. Okay, then I'll just play it because you're actually not missing anything interesting when it comes to the audio.
Okay,
So
perfect.
I'll just play it for the video.
All right, sounds good.
Yay! So that is what it looks like on a dive on Shark Reef Marine Reserve with Banga Adventure Divers. The only thing you were missing if you didn't get any audio out of that was some really intense drumming. So you didn't miss out on anything, but hopefully you got to take away a little bit more of what it's like to actually be on these dives underwater. And just to talk about now marine ecotourism, which is basically what this was set up to be. Essentially, marine ecotourism offers an alternative income stream to those villages that we were talking about that had the natural fishing rights. And it has a positive influence on conservation awareness and also support. So instead of these local villages that were going out and fishing for sharks and receiving, for example, $500 for one dead blacktip reef shark, while also depleting the population for future generations, those same villages are having an incentive to protect the shark species that they would normally be fishing or poaching. And by protecting these species, they're going to provide sustainable yearly income for as long as these sharks are alive and divers can come and visit the area. And just to make sure everyone knows what I'm talking about, so sustainable tourism is when a project meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So as long as the animals are being protected within Shark Reef Marine Reserve and drawing in divers, these villages should have sources of income long into the future. And just for an example of how marine ecotourism has positively benefited the country, in 2012, it was found that Fiji brought in $42.4 million from shark diving revenue. And not all of that is from diving on Banga Adventure Divers with Shark Reef Marine Reserve. It's from other parts of Fiji too, where they've learned to protect and celebrate these animals. So think about all of these divers who are traveling to Fiji simply to see sharks. And they're leaving the country after being educated about the research and the conservation efforts. And all of these divers have a newfound respect and appreciation for these animals. So you can see how it can really make a big difference over the years. Now I just wanted to talk about, if you remember, one of the main purposes that Mike Newman had for establishing Shark Reef Marine Reserve was to actually utilize the area to study those local bull shark populations. And the bull sharks that are found around the reef can get up to about 3.4 meters in length, and they are very big, powerful creatures. Anyone who has been diving here, and that includes Jillian Duncan, I've talked to them about this, these just look larger than any other bull shark you've ever seen before. They're chunky, they're beautiful, and they're powerful, and it really, it's an awe-inspiring experience to dive with them. So there's one researcher, the primary scientist, that's focusing on this research in Shark Reef Marine Reserve is Dr. Jörg Brunschweiler from Switzerland. And since Shark Reef Marine Reserve was established, they've actually identified over 200 bull sharks, and each of those 200 bull sharks have been named, which is done by paying close attention to kind of any distinguishing marks, scars, or deformities that are unique for each shark. So the shark that you have on the top of your screen, that is actually me. That is Lindsay the bull shark. The scars that are present are actually fresh mating scars, so that's not necessarily something you would use to help identify the shark. But the way that we identify Lindsay the bull shark is if you look at the back or the trailing edge of her first dorsal fin, there's a notch right there. And that's one of the best ways to identify Lindsay the bull shark. She also, you can just see it in this photo, but she has a little black hook stuck in the corner of her mouth. That actually, thankfully, rusted and is no longer there. But those are just some of the ways that you learn to identify these sharks. And after going on these dives, each shark has its own personality. So it's really interesting to go on a lot of these dives and recognize sharks that you know and that you've seen before. So along with identifying all of these bull sharks, Jörg also established the bull shark tagging program, which focuses on better understanding bull shark behavior and ecology. So this is done with a full range of techniques, from direct observation of just diving underwater with these animals to pop-up satellite archival tags. They're also tagged with acoustic tags, where the presence will be recorded by acoustic receivers or listening stations that are placed all around Shark Reef Marine Reserve and neighboring reefs. If you want to learn more about tags and tagging techniques, I recommend that you go back and you watch Dr. Skomel's webinar, because he did a really great job of talking about it with his work with great white sharks. I'm not really going to delve into that. But all you have to know is that the telemetry, or the movement data, provides scientists with a presence or absence for individual sharks. So it's letting them know if they're there, when they're not there. And it allows us to follow kind of their small scale movement around the reef area. Bull sharks, I say small scale because bull sharks aren't really known for going on large migration routes. They tend to kind of stick around in one area or have a fidelity to a specific coastal area. And these bull sharks, it was found, are not residents of Shark Reef Marine Reserve, but they congregate from deeper waters once the shark feeds start. And there are some regulars who tune up to the feeds frequently, so you'll see some of the same sharks almost every other day. And then there are more transient individuals that only show up sporadically. So you might only see them on the dives a few times a year, or maybe not for a few years. It's still unknown how large the range is for these bull sharks, but they do show remarkable site fidelity by returning every few weeks, months, or years. And what they found over the years from looking at this telemetry data and the pop-up tags is that the bull sharks around Shark Reef Marine Reserve seem to follow an annual schedule of mating at the beginning of the year, which is observed through mating scars being present on the females, which you can see up in the corner. And then they leave the area to give birth closer to the end of the year. And more recently, some of this research has begun to focus on where the pregnant bull sharks are giving birth and what river systems they're using as nurseries for their pups. And I say river systems because bull sharks, one of the things that makes them very unique among all shark species is that they can survive in waters that have low salinity, so low salt content. And these pregnant females move into the estuaries, the lagoons, the river mouths to give birth to their young, and then their young stay in those areas as they're provided protection from other large sharks and predators. And what you can see in that photo is me holding a little baby bull shark pup that we caught in a river mouth that was really close to Shark Reef Marine Reserve. So more research has been done on that since then. This was in 2014, and more research will continue to be done on that because that's definitely an area that you would want to protect. This is a beautiful photo of some of the divers from Benga adventure divers feeding a bull shark. And part of the research that URIC has worked on over the years is actually the impact of food provisioning on bull sharks. So providing food to these bull sharks. In this case, they're fed tuna heads. And in other parts of the world, shark feeding is a very controversial issue, but it also remains the best way to reliably attract these very shy animals close enough for us to even see them. But what's really cool is that the research that URIC did over the years showed that there was no impact from the feeding on the behavior of these bull sharks. So his data found that the bull sharks were using Shark Reef Marine Reserve during the day, picking up a snack, and then dispersing over the entire area at night. So around Benga Island, all around the southern part of Fiji. And despite the year-round availability of food at the dive site where Benga Adventure Divers was providing these tuna heads, the bulls were not permanently attracted to Shark Reef Marine Reserve. So just because they could get a snack at like a drive-through McDonald's, they weren't just driving their car in there and parking. So the presence and absence data that we were talking about showed that they don't really change their behavior and their movements based on whether food is available. And on feeding and non-feeding days, the sharks have the same behavior and movement. So it also demonstrated, though, that the feeds are necessary, because as soon as you stop the feed on these dives, these bull sharks take off. They're very human averse, and they just really want nothing to do with us besides pick up a snack and leave. One other incredibly important part of Shark Reef Marine Reserve, and also the work that is done by Benga Adventure Divers, the part that is very close to my heart, is the fact that ecotourism combines research, conservation, but also education and outreach. And one of the best ways to educate people about sharks is to get them in the water with sharks. Webinars, everything, these are great when you can't get in the water, but it's a whole different experience when you can bring someone underwater and help them fall in love with these animals. It's really easy to fear what you don't understand or haven't personally experienced. And especially with bull sharks, because bull sharks are widely misrepresented all over the world as being aggressive, very, very dangerous. And I'm lucky enough to have worked for an organization since 2012 called Broadreach, where I teach shark studies courses to high school and college students from all over the world. And I work with Benga Adventure Divers on these month-long courses where I have the opportunity to teach these students all about the aspects of shark biology, behavior, threats, conservation, research techniques. They get the full works. And in my opinion, there's just nothing that compares with being able to lecture about, for example, tooth and jaw morphology in sharks, and then be able to go immediately underwater that afternoon and see how the mechanics of those systems actually work together. And these students are 3 feet away from 40 bull sharks, and they can see how bull sharks throw their jaws open when they go to take a bite. They can see how some of their teeth fall out. It's a really, really amazing experience. And also part of it goes along with getting to know all of the people who work at Benga Adventure Divers, traveling to their local villages to learn firsthand about Fijian culture and customs, and then leaving the country at the end of the month with an appreciation for the country as a whole. It's important to really recognize the country and the work that it's done, not just its beautiful resources. So just to finish on the education, here's a photo of me with, this was taken a few years ago, with the dive staff and some of my students. But I really believe that teaching these students to love and appreciate sharks at a young age gives them the ability to use their knowledge to become lifelong advocates for sharks. And I know not every single student of mine will become a shark biologist in the future, even though I try. And actually a large amount of them do go on to study shark biology, marine biology in college and graduate school. But I expect them all to be able to use their knowledge and voices to somehow positively impact the future of all shark species. Whether that is becoming a scientist, a conservationist, an avid shark diver, or even just educating others around them about sharks and working to break down stereotypes. So I wanted to end this talk with one more video. And in your case, you should actually be glad that you can't have the audio on it because it's like crazy disco music. Um, but this is a really important video that Benga Adventure Divers made in 2014 to celebrate 10 years of hard work and advocacy that enabled Shark Reef Marine Reserve to be designated as Fiji's first national marine park. I love this video because it truly celebrates all the beauty of Fiji, Shark Reef Marine Reserve, not just the bull sharks, all of the shark species. You're going to get to see all 8, including some very large tiger sharks. You're also going to get to see a lot of really cool marine creatures that call that area home, from mantis shrimp to sea turtles, lots of fish, banded sea kraits. It really shows how ecotourism research and education can all be utilized together to bring about positive impacts within the world of shark conservation. And just one note before I start this video, you're gonna see a lot of footage, and this was all taken by Mike Newman and the dive staff, of a specific diver with a yellow hood, and that is Rusi. Rusi was one of the founding members of Benga Adventure Divers that I told you about, and he is celebrated worldwide for being one of the most knowledgeable and well-trained shark feeders anywhere. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, but you're really going to get to experience how he has these amazing interactions with these animals that he spent his whole life protecting and swimming with. So enjoy the video, and here we go. I hope you guys all enjoyed that video. I thought it was the perfect way to wrap up this talk and give you an even better insight of what it's like to dive on such a special place. And if I've done my job right today, if I've done a good job, then hopefully you guys will all have Shark Reef Marine Reserve on your future dive list. I hope that I've intrigued you all enough that you can come and visit and see these animals for yourself. There's also other ways you can get involved with the animals in Shark Reef Marine Reserve. Banga Adventure Divers has a really cool initiation that was set up by their conservation director, Natasha. It's called My Fiji Shark, and you can adopt some of these really cool sharks that are found in Shark Reef Marine Reserve. So thank you so much for letting me blab on about bull sharks and Fiji and everything. It was quite a treat to be able to do that while sitting at home in Vermont. So a huge thank you to you, Jillian, and everyone at Sharks for Kids.
Oh, well, thank you, Lindsay, so much for sharing that. And I think I've been lucky enough to dive there. It's magical. Yeah. There's no place like it. And Mike, who set it up, does refer to our Bimini bull sharks as tadpoles because they are quite a bit smaller. So I will also vouch for the size of the sharks there. Very, very healthy animals, much bigger than even the big girls we get in Bimini. But yeah, I think it's really just, and people who've watched, as I posted, I've talked about this, and some of the other, presentations are the importance of involving the entire community for conservation, for all the stakeholders that have a voice and need to be part of that. And when you include everybody, it's a success story. And everyone benefits, but overall the animals in the ocean benefit as well. And this is a prime example of how to successfully do this and really involve everybody from start to finish. And yeah, a lot of places when you go and dive, the dive operators are not local. The feeders might not be. Bimini, for the most part, it's locals, which I love. I think is amazing. If I travel somewhere, I want to meet someone from there and dive with them and hear their story and hear the history and the culture. And so I think that's also what's really, really special about this spot. So I would second Lindsay saying, if you're interested, diver, future diver, this is, hands down, one of the most amazing dives you can do. Just absolutely mind-blowing to get down there and just go, there's just so many.
Yeah.
It's not, it takes a while to process. I mean, I dive with sharks all the time, dived all over the world, been very lucky. But when you sit down there the first time, just to actually process what you're seeing and experiencing, it takes your breath away. I mean, it takes a minute.
Yeah, it definitely does. The first dive that I take my students on, first of all, they're a little apprehensive, as anyone normally should be before getting in the water with 40 or 60 sharks, but they go down underwater, and when they come back up for the dive interval, the surface interval that we have in the boat, first of all, they have the biggest smile on their faces, but second of all, I'll be like, how many bull sharks do you think you saw down there? And they'll be like, 200. Because they're so overwhelmed. Their senses are so overstimulated. And by the end, 20 dives in, they're going to be able to give you a much more accurate number of not just the sharks that were down there, but also the individual sharks. So once you stop freaking out in joy over how many sharks are there, you start to actually be able to recognize the individuals, Curly, Bump, Gape, Lindsay the bull shark. You start to see more as kind of your senses settle down and you get a little bit more comfortable down there.
Wow. All right, so first question is, do you have a favorite shark or favorite species?
Oh, best question. So of course I have a favorite shark. I actually have two tied for the number one position, these bull sharks, obviously, and great white sharks. And I love great white sharks. I think they are the most majestic, awe-inspiring animals in the whole entire world. few years ago, Jillian Duncan, my parents, Jillian's mom, we all went out together up in Cape Cod, got to spend the day looking at great white sharks. And that was a really, really special experience. We also saw some mola mola, which Jillian knows I really like bizarre animals. So mola molas and sloths are up there too. My second favorite shark though, which I think you could tell from posting the photo, is that I love tawny nurse sharks. All of my students know that I find them to be hilarious. They provide so much entertainment, and I love how fearless they are, and also how they just don't care about anything going on. There could be 10 different 9-foot bull sharks all fighting over one piece, and this 3-foot tawny nurse shark will just go in, take it away, and swim away slowly. They're just amazing animals.
Yeah, I think it's the same. The nurse sharks we have in the Bahamas, same thing. Like they just don't care. They don't care about anything.
They just don't care, and they're very food motivated. So I liken them a lot to kind of labs or golden retrievers. They are 100% food motivated. So they will do anything for that piece of food, for that scrap, for that snack, and they just seem to be. They're very lovable creatures, and you can be a very lovable creature without needing to be hugged and petted and touched. You can love them from afar.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, one of the biggest things about the reason these dives work, and I get asked a lot, I'm sure you do, about feeding and the situation and the dives, and, you know, there's a lot of variables that it depends on, but the fact is wherever you're doing this and whenever you're in the water, is respecting these animals. That is what is allowing us, is respect from creating the dive site, the way it's created, the way the feeding is done. Everything is created out of respect so that we can have this space and share it with these animals. And it's done by not wrestling, riding, harassing them. It's done by observing them, interacting with them, trained professionals doing it. And this allows for so many thousands and thousands of people to, not just in Fiji, but at dive sites around the world, to get an up-close glimpse of these incredible animals and hopefully, like you said, change the way they see them. You know, a lot of people obviously go there, they want to see the sharks, but there's definitely people that show up that have never done this and are afraid, and then they leave with a completely different idea about these animals. And that's the power of, you know, these situations and these dives that are set up. It's really, really remarkable.
Yeah, exactly. And you made a great point. What you can't see in these videos is all the incredibly strict safety protocols that all the divers and feeders are under. All of these divers are protected with almost a 2-to-1 ratio of a diver standing behind them with a little pokey stick in case some of the sharks get a little too close or just aren't paying attention to where they're going. None of the divers are allowed to touch the sharks. Any touching that you saw was actually mostly done by Rusi, who had over 60 years of experience of working with these sharks. And all of the people from Bangga Adventure Divers who are trained to feed these sharks spend years and years and years learning how to do it correctly and also safely.
Aria typed in, she'd like to know if you tag any of them. Maybe she didn't hear you talk about, and maybe not just like the bull sharks, but also maybe talk a little bit about some of the white shark tagging or things like that, like tagging sharks in your experience.
Yeah, so there's a really unique setup for how the tagging happens on Shark Reef Marine Reserve. And Dr. Jurek Brunschweiler, who I talked about, runs all of the tagging programs there. But because Shark Reef Marine Reserve is a no-take zone, there's no fishing allowed. And a lot of the ways that we tag sharks in other areas, in Bimini, Jupiter, other places, is we utilize a fishing pole or fishing methods to catch these sharks, bring them up next to the boat, work them up, and then safely release them. But you can't do that in Fiji on Shark Reef Marine Reserve. So all of these animals are actually tagged with like a spear gun that has a tag at the end of it. So while swimming close to these sharks, you just stick the spear gun close to the dorsal fin, and some of these sharks don't even notice. Other sharks will swim away very carefully because they don't like to be touched. And another method that Uric has used to tag these bull sharks is also sticking some of these tags, some of the acoustic tags, in a tuna head. So then these bull sharks actually swallow the tags that way. So they're very non-invasive measures when it comes to tagging, with zero handling. It's all about trying to reduce any stress on these animals, and to not really scare them away from visiting the site in the future.
Very cool. And if you guys check out, I did a video just talking about intro to shark science and all the different tags, and in that is a clip of a diver actually diving down, free diving with kind of a pole spear, so a slightly different than a spear gun, but exactly doing that, shooting the tag on, and you see the hammerhead kind of go away, but then the hammerhead just comes back in circles. So it obviously felt it, but it didn't bother it enough for it to take off. But the hammerheads in Bimini are obviously very conditioned to being around people and being fed. So yeah, if you guys want to see that, it's pretty incredible. They're doing it with
cool.
sharks. I mean, if you watch Dr. Scomo's talk, he's doing it from a boat and just popping that tag on. So,
which is very impressive.
Yeah, if you understand what that means, and a target of a moving animal with a spot that's, it's a big animal, but the spot you need to get that tiny little tag on.
Including waves and everything.
It's not, that's definitely very, very tricky. So Imel, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, wants to know how many different species of shark do you think you've seen or dived with or worked with? Do you have an idea?
Ooh, well, that's a really good question. I can very easily tell you the sharks that I haven't seen because they are in the forefront of my mind at all times. But I mean, working on Shark Reef Marine Reserve, I have seen all 8 of those species. I don't see as many tiger sharks anymore, and this is because of something called competitive exclusion. There are actually so many bull sharks that show up to feed there that the tiger sharks are kind of pushed out of the area. It's too much effort for them to go and compete with these bull sharks to get the tuna heads. So we don't see as many tiger sharks. But my time in Bimini, I mean, from Jillian's talks, you know that Bimini is just like a treasure trove of sharks. You never know what you're going to see. Lemon sharks, nurse sharks, tiger sharks. You've got deep sea sharks that you catch on the long lines. It's amazing. And I've worked with a lot of white sharks also, but I can tell you that I have never seen a great hammerhead shark, so I need to do that, and I've never seen a whale shark. So I can tell you that those are 2 sharks that I really want to add to my have seen list in the future.
Well, that's why we have to get you to Bimini. I can't really help you with the whale shark.
I know.
Definitely show you a great hammerhead. Your kind of answer to that sort of leads into Kiefer. Thank you, Kiefer, for joining us again. I know you've been a rock star and enjoying lots of these webinars. Wanted to know if the bull shark population is getting higher in that area. You kind of talked about that with why the tiger sharks, but with the research now having been gone on for quite a few years, is that population, you mentioned some are localized, some are a bit more transient, but overall is that population increasing, or do they know?
So that population doesn't seem to be increasing. What happens is that it seems to be more bull sharks are becoming aware that Shark Reef Marine Reserve is there and a possible stop off to get a snack. That data that I was talking about, the presence and absence data, and also where these sharks seem to go, none of these bull sharks live year round on Shark Reef Marine Reserve. It really is something that I akin to a rest stop on the highway. Some of these sharks stop for longer rests there, some are just there for a day, and then they go on their way. So there are times of the year when there are 40 to 60 bull sharks all together at the same time, as opposed to when these sharks are off mating and there might only be 1 or 2, but that's simply just due to the mating, the birthing schedule. It's not necessarily showing that there are more sharks flocking to Shark Reef Marine Reserve, or a sudden increase in populations. One way to help ensure that the populations are going to increase in the future, though, is to really figure out where these bull sharks are giving birth, what river mouths, and try to work with the fishermen and the villages in those areas to make sure that the birthing and pupping grounds can be protected.
We just had one come in. When you talked about, you mentioned swallowing the tag. Do they eventually release the tag? I mean, how does that, obviously,
Yes.
I think people know it's going to pass, or I don't know if people know, but
Yeah.
they can also pass stuff through their skin as well. I think there was a cool Dr. Steve Kessel talked about, actually read a paper with one coming through a lemon shark with a hook actually passing through. So how does that pass through or how long does it stay in?
You know, I don't actually know the numbers of how long exactly the tag will stay in there. That has to do a little bit more with the digestive travels inside the shark. But a lot of sharks will eat a snack, eat a tuna head, and then not be hungry for quite a long time after, whether that's days, weeks, or longer. So it really depends how long that tag will stay inside the shark before it's passed. And that also tends to be why it's a little bit more reliable to tag the exterior of the shark, so by the dorsal fin, just to know or be a little bit more assured that that tag is going to stay there for longer.
And Xavier's asked a couple of questions. So Xavier is joining us from Derby, Vermont. I don't know how close.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So thank you, Xavier, for joining us.
Everything's close in Vermont, so.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a massive state. So, and he wanted to know, he has a couple questions like, where did you end up going to? Because, you know, it's landlocked, but where did you go to university? Did that get you closer to the ocean? And also, are there like best spots in New England to kind of see and study sharks?
Yeah, so that is a great question. When a lot of people hear that I'm from Vermont, they are very surprised, knowing that either Vermont is completely landlocked or that Vermont is so small they don't know where it is. But I just don't think that having a lack of access to the ocean will ever stop anyone from falling in love with the ocean or falling in love with the creatures. I think it's something that is ingrained in you or that you experience when you're growing up and you fall in love with. So I did my undergrad and graduate work in Connecticut and also in Massachusetts. And my master's program is a really cool program out of Northeastern where you actually have different semesters all over the world. So we did a semester in Boston, a semester in French Polynesia, a semester in Catalina, focusing on kelp forests and that kind of stuff. But when I was also studying my undergrad in Connecticut, at Connecticut College, right on the ocean, right next to Mystic Aquarium, I was able to tailor my study abroad programs to make sure that I was getting the education that I really wanted in order to do what I want in my future. So I studied abroad in the Turks and Caicos, the Cayman Islands, and I even went to Panama for 2 months to study sloths. So it doesn't really matter, I think, where you go to school, as long as you have the ability to tailor your education, whether through studying abroad, whether through internships, and the ability to focus on what you want to study. And Massachusetts and other parts of New England actually have amazing places for you to study shark. I mean, Greg Scommel does all of his work out of Massachusetts, and the New England Aquarium has an amazing program where they focus on different shark species, shark studies. There used to be a shark lab out of University of New England. I think it recently moved to Arizona. And Lisa Nathanson is out of Rhode Island. So there are many, many places in New England to get your shark fix. And not just that, there's many opportunities to actually work with these amazing scientists that are really kind of world renowned within their fields. Even though the waters aren't as clear in New England, they are just as filled with sharks, from white sharks, threshers, dogfish. Like, we are actually very lucky about the amount of sharks that we have up in New England.
And I think you know, as a kind of a final note to those of you, you've heard me say this a bunch when on these talks, is that if you're interested in this, volunteering, internships, you know, that's, I did it, Lindsay did it, you know, it's, you get the degree and you learn all that, but really getting out there and getting in the field and gaining experience, joining a broad reach dive trip, they have them all around the world, and just gaining that experience, that knowledge, learning how to dive. These are all things that are really, really valuable. And just start looking around and seeing what's available. And I think you'd be surprised. And, you know, just because you don't live near the ocean doesn't mean maybe there's a local aquarium that has a great volunteer program. And, you know, find out, and then they're connected with a location that is on the ocean and doing projects. So yeah, I think it's really, really important that these opportunities are there. Explore it, do a bit of research, and find out, because there are amazing opportunities.
And the best thing I can add to that, probably one of the most important lessons that I've learned while going through undergrad, high school, in my early career, is that it never hurts to ask. A very, very few people will say no to free help or to someone watching them, learning you know, their techniques and how to do things. And until you ask, you just don't know if it's possible or not. So it doesn't hurt to ask.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay, for your time today and this amazing story. Again, you guys check out.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. And to everyone who joined, for your questions, make sure to check out sharksforkids.com for some cool bull shark activities if you really love these animals, and some fun fact sheets. Lindsay's information as well. You can follow her adventures. It's on the website where you found the link for the webinar to keep up and see what she's doing once the world gets back to our version of normal. But thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.